the book of Luke. You'll find Matthew, Mark, Luke, chapter 15.
Amazing. So we're starting at verse 11. So it's the parable of the lost son. Jesus continued, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, 'Father, give me my share of the estate.' So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in the whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to the fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, 'How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare? And here I am starving to death. I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants.' So he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his servants, 'Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' So they began to celebrate. Meanwhile, the elder son, was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked him what was going on. 'Your brother has come,' he replied, 'and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound.' The elder brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, 'Look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours who has squandered your property with prostitutes comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him.' 'My son,' the father said, 'you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.'" This is the word of the Lord.
Wonderful, thanks, Juliet. Evening, everyone. My name's Jim. I'm the vicar here. Really nice to see you, whether I've seen you for the 100th time or this is, in fact, your first time. You are so welcome. I just want to say welcome home, everyone. Whether it's your first time, whether you've come back after the summer, but it's so good to be together at home again. Now, this morning, we kicked off our new series. We're kicking it off again tonight. Juliet's already mentioned the title, Living Free in a World that Holds On. Now, our culture, I think, tells us all the time to hold on. Hold on to money, look after your image, control, success, even to hold on to grudges. Look after yourself, protect what's yours, don't let go. But over this series, we're going to be looking at how Jesus invites us into another way of life, living with open arms, with open hands. With open arms and hands, firstly, you can receive. If your hands are full of stuff you're clinging onto, it's actually really hard to receive. So we're going to be looking at how we receive freely from God's abundance, but then how, with what we receive, we have open hands and live generously with our time, with our money, with our friendships, with our welcome. And so this evening, right at the start of this series, we want to start by grounding it all and thinking about God's open arms of generosity and grace. Because the measure to which we are generous is the measure to which we've understood God's abundance to us. And here in the middle of Luke's gospel, Jesus tells us the greatest, I think, short story ever told. The story that many of you, whether you're been to church before or not, whether you're a Christian or not, many of you will know this story as the story of the prodigal son. And this story is a story of a son who's got a good life. Like, his father's good, his household's clearly quite well off. This son has a good life. And yet, he still wants to take and to hold on and to grab some of his inheritance. He wasn't due that inheritance really till his father died. By rights, because he was the youngest son in that culture, a third of his father's estate was his. And so he wants it early. He wants to take it. He wants to hold on. He wants to grab it. And so he does that. He kind of puts on his shoes, he gets dressed, and he goes off into the far country, the text says. And he enjoys it. He has a good time initially. But very soon we read that he wastes it all. He squanders it all. And ultimately, he loses everything. That's the meaning, if you look at it in the dictionary. I think there's a slide, hopefully, Dan, that'll come up. That's the meaning of the word prodigal. Someone who spends money or uses resources freely and recklessly, wastefully and extravagant. That's why this passage is called the prodigal son, or has been called the prodigal son. I want you to remember that definition of prodigal. Now, it's funny because if you look in your Bibles, it has the title above Luke 15, verse 11. It says the prodigal son, I think. I've not actually checked those, but it says what? The lost son. Okay. Well, it says the lost son, the prodigal son. Either way, it's a bit weird because Jesus never actually gave this story a title. He just told it. And our Bibles didn't actually give it this title, whether it's the lost son or the prodigal son, till about the 16th or 17th century when the King James Bible came out. That's the first time we see it being called the prodigal son. And that's just been steeped in our culture. So when we hear this story, we think the prodigal son. And that's okay, except it's not what the story is really about. You see, the prodigal son isn't the main character in this story. This story is really about the father and his open arms to not just one son, but two sons. And it's about whether they choose to receive his love, his grace, his generosity with open arms or not. And in fact, if you look back to the early church, the early patristic writers, the theologians of the first centuries, they call this story the story of the loving father. And the difference actually matters. It's not just words. Because if we think the main character is the son, we kind of focus on failure. But if we see the main character is the father, then we focus on grace. The hero of this story is the father. It's about his open arms, his generosity, his grace. Ambrose, a bishop in the 4th century, put it like this: the father runs to meet the son because his grace cannot be delayed. He embraces him, kisses him. He restores him as son, not as servant. That's what this story is really about. And so this younger son, he grows up in his father's house. He has everything he could possibly need. But he decides he wants to hold on to some of that for himself. It's kind of got resonance, I think, with creation, actually. Adam and Eve, they had the whole garden. And yet there was something in the human condition that meant they wanted to grab on to what they thought was more, but was actually less than was available to them in the first place. And so he takes his share of the inheritance. He sticks on his shoes, probably the flashiest Nike Airs or whatever it is the cool kids wear these days. And in fact, I bought these thinking they were really cool, and my kids take the mick out of me saying they look like orthopedic shoes. But anyway, there we go. Tells you how far off I am. But he goes off, and at first, it feels like freedom, like it tastes like freedom. He is having a whale of a time. He's independent. He's in control. No one can tell him what to do. But really quickly, The lie that is shows up. The fun runs out, the money disappears, and the friends disown him. And don't miss this in the passage. For a Jewish audience, ending up feeding pigs was the ultimate picture of not just shame, not just dirt, but complete spiritual uncleanliness. If you look back to Leviticus 11, which is where all the purity and holy laws come through for that culture, it says, the pig is unclean. You must not eat it or even touch its carcass. So when Jesus says this young man longed to eat the pig's food, he's saying this guy has hit rock bottom. He's as low as he can get, materially, spiritually, socially. He's bankrupt, he's unclean, he's outcast. Augustine, one of the early church fathers, said the far country in this parable is the soul forgetting God. The soul forgetting God. And isn't that not only true maybe in our own hearts, but what we see around us as well? We're told, be whoever you want to be. Create your own identity. Define your own truth, which at first sounds wonderfully freeing. But the reality, as I can see it at least, is it leaves people anxious, exhausting, and alone. It seems the more we try to hold on and control who we are, the less free we actually become. And then comes the moment of honesty. We read, the son comes to his senses. He realizes his hands are empty. He gets up, puts on those scuffed trainers, and he begins the long walk home. And the trainers, which once looked so fresh, are cracked, muddy, covered in pig slop, falling apart. And they tell a story. They tell the story of his selfishness. They tell the story of his wastefulness, of his regrets, his shame. And they tell the story of how far he has traveled from the home and the arms of his loving Father. But here's the good news. Grace means that your dirty trainers don't disqualify you. The Father doesn't stand with arms crossed, waiting to inspect them. He doesn't berate his son as he comes back and goes, what have you done? It's good you're back, mate, but what were you playing at? The first thing it says the Father does is he runs to him and embraces him. There's no qualification. I know with my kids, when they come into the hallway with dirty shoes, even after they've been at a long day at school, my initial reaction isn't one of, oh, it's so good to have you home again. It's the opposite. And yet the Father here throws his arm around the son. The fact that he ran in that culture, the kind of father of the household did not run. It was undignified. And so the fact it says he hitches up his tunic, he stuffs it in his belt, and he runs, that was a sign of dishonor. And yet he's prepared to do that, to be undignified, to embrace and cover the son's shame. He doesn't give a lecture. He doesn't make him pay everything back. He doesn't give him a sackcloth for mourning. Instead, what he does is he gives him a shiny purple curtain. It says he clothes him in a robe. He replaces what was on his feet for sandals, and he gives him a ring. I've totally lost my place. I did that. The robe, the sandals, and the ring, to Jesus' listeners, would have been all about signs of dignity, signs of restoration, signs of belonging, a public declaration. This wasn't just about giving the son clean clothes. This was a public declaration to the community that this is not a servant. This is my son. I restore him. I forgive him. And for Jesus' listeners, this would have been rich with Old Testament imagery. If you look to Isaiah 61:10, it says, "He has clothed me with garments of salvation, and he has arrayed me in the robe of his righteousness." Zechariah 3 gives a vision of a high priest standing in filthy clothes, and the Lord says, "See, I have taken away your sin, and I will put fine garments on you." That's what's happening here. The Father is covering shame, he is cleansing sin, and is restoring honor. Another one of the earliest Christian teachers, Origen, said this: "The Father gives far more than the Son dares to ask for. He doesn't just forgive, he adorns." I love that. He doesn't just forgive, he adorns. Speaks of beauty, of abundance. This is a picture of grace. It's generosity. It's a loving Father. In fact, if we could just have that definition of prodigal back up. You could argue that this love, this grace, is reckless, that it's wasteful, that it's over extravagant, that it's unfair. In fact, Tim Keller famously calls it the prodigal God. The parable of the prodigal God. Because God, the Father, in some senses, is the one who's prodigal. He's lavish, he's extravagant, he's almost wasteful with his mercy. I don't know if you've ever experienced that sense of extravagance, almost like over and above. I once experienced a glimpse of that. We used to be youth workers, my wife and I, in a church, and the church is generous, but for a youth worker's salary, they're not that generous. And we were kind of sharing one wage between us, and this lovely couple, he was a QC, so they had a lovely house, and they invited us out for a meal, which was very generous of them, but we were thinking there's no way we can afford anything more than McDonald's. So we said, "That's really nice of you, but we can't." And they said, no, don't worry, it's on us. I was like, wow, that's amazing. And then it came to the night, and they turned up to our door, and they said, we've only made a reservation for 2 of you. You two go. We'll look after Erin, who at the time was 12 months. We were very sleep deprived. And they booked us into this amazing restaurant that we could never have dreamed about. They looked after Erin for the night. And it was great because we got a good meal. And then we just were able to sleep for ages. But it was just so over the top extravagant, more than we could have expected. We hadn't earned it, we didn't deserve it, but we got to see and taste something amazing. It's just a really small picture of what it's like when the Father puts the robe on your shoulders. You're not just forgiven, you're honored, restored, adorned. And here's the thing, we can't be generous until we've received generosity. We can't live free until we've been clothed in the robe of the Father's grace. There's just one more section I want to look at, because this story isn't just about the younger son. It isn't just about the father. It's also about the older brother too. He's been at home the whole time. He's been working hard. He's been doing his duty. He's been diligent. He never left. He never rebelled. And yet, when the party starts, he refuses to join in. He'd rather stay in the field. And we see that even though he's been living in his father's home, he's not understood his father's heart. Even though the whole time he's been living in his father's home, he's not understood the heart of his father. And so this apron of the brother, which on the face of it looks very commendable, actually represents entitlement and resentment. Working but never celebrating. A life of duty and comparison and self-righteousness. He's holding on so tightly to that identity that he can't open his arms to receive the Father's joy or abundance. And he can't celebrate when the lost comes home. You'll notice in the passage he refers to his brother as your son, not my brother. And so the apron has, in fact, become more like a straitjacket. In verse 29, he says, all these years I've been slaving for you and I've never disobeyed. He's seen himself as a servant, but not a son, working hard to earn his father's love. But he now resents his father's grace to his brother. Again, another great preacher of the 4th century said this: let us not envy those who come late, nor think ourselves wronged by the Father's kindness. The Father loses nothing by giving to another. For the older brother, the grace extended to his younger brother isn't fair, and forgiveness appears too generous. It wasn't that the older brother was against his brother coming home. As a good, religious, dutiful man, absolutely he understood it was the right thing to do to welcome his brother home. But that doesn't mean there should be dancing and a party. Yes, let him return to bread and water, but not the fattened calf. He doesn't deserve that. Let him come home wearing sackcloth, but don't give the guy a robe. He doesn't deserve it. Let him wear ashes to show his repentance, but don't give him a ring of authority. Let him come in tears, penitent. Don't let the guy dance with joy. He doesn't deserve that. And so again, the tragedy is that the older son is close in proximity to his father, but far, far away in spirit. But at the end of this parable, the father opens his arm to both sons. He doesn't have favorites. God's love is both and, not either or. And he gives the same offer to the older son who's wearing his apron out in the cold. Come home, come and receive, come and enjoy the party. Let go of everything you're holding onto and receive my embrace. Everything that is mine is yours. There's more than enough to go round. The Father does not prefer one to the other. He opens his arm to both alike. So I just want to end by asking you, which outfit are you sat there wearing tonight? Are you dragging your feet in scuffed, dirty trainers, wondering if you've gone too far? Wondering if the Father will welcome you home? Perhaps you're on the way away from the Father, looking for freedom. Or maybe you're stood there in an apron of resentment or comparison, serving the Lord but missing the joy. Or maybe you're wearing the robe, living free in abundant grace, open hands of generosity with your time, your money, your talent, your relationships. We're constantly told to hold on to our image, to our hustle, to our rights, to our hurt. But the Father says, let go. Open your hands. Open your arms.